Sure, we'll
Thank
do
you.
so.
Good afternoon, Asia, and good morning, Europe. My name is Michelle Christensen, and I am the Committee and Membership Manager at the European Chamber of Commerce in Singapore. On behalf of Eurocham and the Southeast Asia IPSME Help Desk, I would like to welcome you all to this webinar on the impact of COVID-19 on SMEs in the e-commerce space. Before I give the floor to our distinguished speakers, I would like to say a few words about Eurocham. The Chamber, which was established in 2001, represents the European business community in promoting bilateral trade, services, and investments between Europe and Singapore. Eurocham is comprised of European national business groups and direct corporate members for whom the Chamber provides a forum for advocacy, networking opportunities, and information sharing. IP rights is a key focus for Eurocham, and as such, we are happy to partner up with the help desk on this topic. Eurocham's own IP committee is heavily engaged in the topic of e-commerce and IP rights as well, which I would be happy to share further details on if anyone should be interested. If you would like more information about Eurocham, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. I would like to pass the word on to Nora Bahir from the Southeast Asia IP SME Help Desk.
Thank you, Michelle. Hello, everyone. My name is Nora. I'm project manager for the Southeast Asia IP SME Help Desk. And I appreciate the opportunity to participate to this webinar on behalf of the project jointly organized with Eurocham Singapore. Just a quick introduction to this project. It's an initiative of the European Commission to support small and medium-sized enterprises from the European Union to protect and enforce their intellectual property rights when expanding to Southeast Asia. The good news is that all services offered by the help desk are free of charge. And just a very quick overview on the services that we have. So we have an inquiry helpline through which you can get in touch with the project and receive a reply to your IP concern within 3 working days. We organize training workshops online and before and after COVID on site. So you are always welcome to sign up for these events and learn more about IP. And then I would like to emphasize that we have just launched our new website last week. So you see the website link on the slide. So on this website, you can find out more about IP in the 10 ASEAN countries. We have a lot of industry-specific publications, general IP guides. So also we have a guide on e-commerce and an infographic on e-commerce. So you are welcome to check those. And without any further ado, I would like to pass the floor to our moderator, Sharmini, today and start this exciting webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Nora. Well, good afternoon and good morning, everyone. Thank you to the SEA SME Help Desk and the Eurochamber for organizing this very topical webinar. I would like to, and also to the distinguished speakers for their participation. So before we start, I'd like to invite the speakers to briefly introduce themselves. We'll begin with an introduction by Ms. Valentina Salmoraghi. Valentina.
Thank you. Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. My name is Valentina Salmoraghi. I'm the anti-counterfeiting advisor for the International Trademark Association, or as called in short, INTA. I work together with the Anti-Counterfeiting Committee, supporting their projects, and I also help devising and implementing the anti-counterfeiting strategy for the association for Asia Pacific. Thank you.
Thank you, Valentina. Now I'd like to move on to Mr. Javier Dubourg.
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you for the kind invitation and for having me. My name is Xavier Dubourg. I'm Managing Director and co-founder of BabyZen here in Hong Kong. BabyZen is a company that manufactures strollers and accessories. We're particularly touched by the IP world and counterfeit activities around the world. So this is a very good opportunity for me to participate and perhaps share a few of my insights on the topic.
Thank you, Xavier. And I'd now like to invite Joyce Ang.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Shamini, for giving me the opportunity. My name is Joyce Ang. I'm from the Lazada IPR protection team. And in particular, I lead brand cooperation efforts. And I'm very thankful to the Eurocham Singapore, as well as the IPSME Help Desk for giving me the opportunity to share about Lazada and Lazada's IPR protection effort here. Nice to meet everyone.
Thank you, Joyce. Now, let me try and set the stage for our distinguished speakers. So I think everyone on the call will know that COVID-19 has actually accelerated digitization, and it's actually aided the business to shift, businesses and consumers to shift on to the online space. In the ASEAN context, the Economy SEA research, which was sponsored or supported by Google, Temasek, and Bain, found that in 2020, 40 million new users joined the internet. And this accounts for 40 million internet users, which equals to approximately 70% of ASEAN's population. That's a huge number there. In the global context, a report by Payoneer reported that at the height of COVID-19, between March and April 2020, the online streaming sector grew by 45%, and it's expected to be worth approximately $184.3 billion US by 2027, and that's in the global context. With that as the background and the scene that has been set, I'd now like to invite Ms. Valentina Salmoraghi to share her thoughts with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Please, you can move also to the next slide. And we're really glad for INTA to be, one of the participants of this webinar and having the opportunity to share our global view and projects on specifically on online counterfeiting, and also some best practice that we have developed over the years. So the International Trademark Association is a global association of brand owners and professionals. They're dedicated to supporting trademarks and related intellectual property rights to foster consumer trust, economic growth, and innovation. And we are a non-for-profit association founded back in 1878. Thanks. Next slide, please. We have a very wide membership, over 7,000 total members worldwide and in about 190 countries. So really gives the look of really a global association, as you can see, professionals, corporate members, associates, governments as well, and academics are part of our members. Next, please. So our presence is also a global presence in terms of offices. And I just to highlight to you that we have offices in Asia. So one for Southeast Asia is located in Singapore, and the China office based in Beijing. This gives us really not only the global presence, but also a possibility of being closer to our members in various regions, including Asia. And so to work together and having global knowledge and expertise, and also a global network as well. Next slide, please. So for INTA, really anti-counterfeiting is a priority. And I always want to start, assessing and giving some numbers to assess the size of the economic impact of counterfeiting and piracy on the global level. It is also very important to remember that the trade in fake goods, which infringe, brands and also the related IP rights, harms companies and governments alike. And this is really a very important point, for INTA. We have prepared this study which is based on the study on the economic cooperation and development, the OECD and the European Union Intellectual Property Office together, building on this study and taking the statistics of counterfeits in 2013. We actually built on this and calculated and estimated the trade in counterfeits and pirated goods with the forecast on 2022. And this study actually was done before the pandemic happened, which means that this very preoccupying number that we're sharing here could actually most likely have also increased because of the increased use, of course, of counterfeited products during the pandemic. I will come back to this point and few trends on this later on. Just to give the value of counterfeits and pirated goods, as you can see in this slide, is projected to be over 2,000 billion euro, in 2022 and recently. And so this also is connected to displacement of legitimate economic activity, wider economic and social costs, and employment losses. So all things and indicators of how counterfeiting and piracy actually affects various categories as well. Next slide, please. So to go to the core of our presentation in terms of few trends that we have identified, the expansion of the internet, we all know that makes it easy for online counterfeiting to grow because those infringers and counterfeiters can easily hide behind the anonymity of the internet. And internet gives them also the opportunity to reach and sell consumers globally, and that's outside of the national limits of law enforcement of each jurisdiction. So we also know that companies always found some frustration in the fact that when a site is found and is shut down, maybe another site and many other sites could quickly be reopened again, making a recognized struggle for brand owners to effectively stop the counterfeiters and their activities and enforce their rights. So it's clear by now that for all businesses, including also bigger businesses and also SMEs, this new iteration of global problem of online counterfeiting can also limit the traditional means of prevention and enforcement of their rights. So brand owners feel that they need to invest time and also their resources, including economical and staff resources in several ways, and also technological ways as well, to detect and combat also the infringements on the internet. But we also believe that this also demands brand owners to continue engage with other stakeholders in the online environment, using also their proximity and expertise to assist in tackling the sales of fake goods. So it's more a cooperation and a really collaboration that is required, that can help brand owners, can help also all the other stakeholders in achieving the final and common result, that is finding and stop counterfeits. So also through the projects within INTA, it became very evident that this requires a more comprehensive strategy and a cross-sector collaboration. So starting and certainly working together with the e-commerce platforms or marketplaces, social media platforms as well, but also engage with several other stakeholders. And the platforms, which are also, by the way, which are also, some of them and the major of them are also INTA members. So we heard their struggles directly and their challenges, directly in trying to improve the online and e-commerce space. The platforms should also continue to explore and adopt mechanisms that facilitate the effective reporting from brand owners on counterfeits and abuses on their platforms, and also finding efficient ways to work together with the brand owners, and ultimately also to protect the consumers, which are also, of course, a part of these pictures, and which the protection of consumer is in interest of the companies because of their reputation and the products, in the interest of the platforms as well, as their clients and so the final consumers. So as a matter of fact, we have, as an association, we have helped also in this type of discussions in really bringing together, on the table, virtually and physically as well, all the key stakeholders to really explain and have an open discussion on their challenges. And in response to that, there have been already, of course, changes over the years, improvements. The e-commerce platforms have also reacted to the requests. And for instance, several of major platforms such as Alibaba or the companies belonging to their group, such as Lazada, have tightened the measures. They have their measures for anti-counterfeiting, and also build on specific programs. eBay and Amazon, also in INTA members, they have done the same and implemented processes. So just to give you a few examples, that the trend that we have seen is, of course, a commitment to some extent from major platforms to really acknowledge and work together on this challenge. In addition to this, and also, of course, then our speaker from Lazada, Joyce, she will give us for sure examples, more practical examples on how they cooperate better. I really would like to highlight and strengthen the importance of this cooperation. And during the COVID-19 pandemic, the situation made really many more people relying heavily on e-commerce, purchasing their goods. It was actually, as myself as a consumer, very comforting knowing that when there was a disruption of the supply chain of all goods, that there was also there was still the opportunity to, of course, have access to those goods on various ways, including, of course, the online purchase. But this situation, as an exponential growth, has created also some perfect entry point for counterfeiters. Counterfeiters are they looked for taking advantage on the legitimate channels, such as e-commerce platforms, social media, and also illicit avenues like dark websites as well. And this disruption in the supply chain has been as reflected really on a global scale, and all of a sudden, and it presented an opportunity for counterfeiters to fill the gaps on products demand with substandards and IP infringing goods as well. So companies, of course, are generally aware of the supply chain vulnerabilities that they may have, and also working, in that respect. But this massive disruption altogether has created really and really increased, these vulnerabilities. So now more than ever, it's very important for all companies, including the SMEs, to really understand more on how they can protect their business and grant, consumers access to their original products. I would like also to share with you a few statistics, very interesting statistics in the context of COVID-19 that I have found.
Valentina, just a kind reminder of the time.
Yes. I just would like to share these statistics with you in terms of to let you also understand the trends. So the number of counterfeit detection increased between March and April in 2020, in a number of products, increase of 38% across apparel, toys, home goods, accessories, and of course, all those healthcare and sanitary products that were related to COVID as well. It's actually very interesting also to look at some specific anti-counterfeiting operations coordinated by Interpol. For instance, the so-called Operation Pangea, which is coordinated by Interpol with police, customs, regulatory authorities in 90 countries together. And then they actually, compared to their previous operations in on the similar type of goods, they found that during the pandemic, there was a growth of 100% increase of seizures of counterfeit medicines. So before, and I will conclude with this for the moment, before the pandemic, INTA had already, of course, worked on several initiatives to support business understanding how they can deal with the stakeholders and how this dealing could be facilitated, what has worked and what still needs to be improved. We had several committee regional surveys with the focus specifically on Asia and Southeast Asia as well, and that includes also surveys among our members trying to understand what are the available takedown policies and major platforms, how they work, how effective they were, and what was also the follow-up and the outcome of this. So we had surveyed internally on e-commerce platforms and social media as well. And particularly since the pandemic started, we also implemented a survey on specific counterfeits for COVID-19 with a focus on pharmaceutical healthcare products as well. So all of this, just to conclude, and this leads to the slide that you can see, we have also developed in the past, and we are currently updating because of the situation, the best practice, a paper called Best Practice for Addressing the Sale of Counterfeits on the Internet. And this is really, this includes key recommendations, and these really stress the importance of stakeholders' collaboration. So I will stop here for the moment, and we hear from a company and an e-commerce platform who can give us their perspective, and maybe I can come back to this later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Valentina, for that informative update and sharing. We will now move on to Mr. Xavier. Over to you from a brand owner's perspective. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Valentina, for this very complete presentation. There are actually quite a few points in common that we have in our observations and challenges, so this would be quite interesting. A quick overview on the brand. So Babyzen is a French stroller manufacturer. We do strollers and related accessories. The idea is to have a very versatile product that you can use from birth onwards, basically until 4 or 5 years, until you're fed up of pushing your child around. It's 2 colors of frames with 9 colors of fabrics, all interchangeable. So it gives a sense of choice to the parents when they want to buy a product and not have to be stuck with whatever one choice potentially a store would be having. We have a brand that now exists since 2010, 2009. So we're a little bit over the 12 years, fairly young company still. In terms of trademark or IP registration, we have several patents. And this is a very important point that we'll develop later on. And trademarks. When we look at registered patents or registered trademarks, I name 5, but basically if you have to register them throughout the world, it makes a lot more registrations than just the number of trademarks that you're actually working with. And then the way we distribute our products is through a selective retail channel. In most countries, we work with distributors or importers, and they have their network of retailers who are generally always specialized in child products, childcare products. We're in 90+ countries over the 5 continents. We have close to 3,000 retail points that are carrying our products. Just for the Asia Pacific region, it gives us a bit over 900 stores that we work with. We have over 100 e-commerce or at least online stores, and then 3 flagship stores in China. So on Tmall, we're on JD, and we are on WeChat. And these are the only ones that are flagship, that are operated by ourselves, whereas all of the other online stores are operated by retailers or third-party partners. On the next slide, please. So I tried to cover what our IP situation is in terms of enforcement activities. What are the different challenges that we do face? What are the several observations and trends that we can identify at the moment in the midst of COVID-19? And then a couple of success stories, because at the end of the day, and that's what we all want to hear, is that it is possible to fight against IP infringement. So to end on a bit of a positive note. So the first thing that we did, and this was very, very important, and it's probably pivotal for every single brand that is out there, is that if you do not go through the proper registration of your IP, being trademark, being utility models, being patents, you won't have a choice in fighting them at all. So it doesn't mean that because you've registered something that you will win, but it does mean that you will not be able to fight if you do not register anything. So get your IP rights in place in the countries that are your target countries, either for manufacturing or for distributing. That's very, very important. And in our case, China was very much a focus of the infringement activities. It doesn't mean that it will be for everyone or for every brand, but I think it is in more cases rather than less. A lot of manufacturing going on over there. It takes some effort to look into it. It takes some effort to discover where the manufacturers are once you've done your proper investigations. But as much as we're concerned, a lot of the roots has originated in China. So be prepared to tackle IP issues in a country where you might not be even present in terms of distribution at the moment. Another point for us that was extremely important is to have a local IP firm or lawyer. It could be in-house also, but if you're covering several countries or several territories, extremely difficult to have one person who will be able to master all of the intricacies of the various laws and territories. So we're working with a law firm specialized in IP. They do not only several of our registrations, but they are the ones that are at the forefront of our enforcement activities, from simple investigation going all the way to the courts. So this is extremely, extremely important. And they are also the ones who will be in contact with the various third-party companies. It can be with platforms when there are some activities to be taken, or with various administrations. This is something that has worked for us tremendously, a lot in China, but not only. Work with the customs to register your products and give them training so that they can identify the real from the fake. If you do have infringing activities that fall under the criminal laws, make sure that you are in contact with the IP police investigative forces, or that you can bring as much support as possible. The AIC for China, which is an Administration for Industry and Commerce, and they basically deal with the legislations put in place when it comes to IP rights. So these are all activities and enforcements that we carried out, and that were very important to us. And I could only highly recommend that you do this as well. Challenges, there are many. The very first one, and for an SME in particular, is the budget. It takes considerable amount of money to do your registrations properly, to cover the territories that you want to, and it might not always be in direct correlation with the revenue that you are expecting. So there's that extra challenge in understanding why you should be registering an IP in a country where you're not necessarily selling today. It's a high budget, but it is necessary. Once again, without that, you won't be able to do anything. The legal systems vary, and it's very difficult for us as a brand to understand that. Once again, rely on a local partner to help you understand and to guide you in the right decision, or at least to give you the advice for you to make the proper decision when it comes to enforcing or not an IP issue. one of the challenges that we've been facing over the past year, and this is probably, it falls into the trend column as well, is that with COVID-19, there's much less leeway to go on the ground, investigate, see what is happening in the counterfeit areas. If it's online, it probably is offline as well. And if it is online, you're going to want to go upstream to find the source of where the products are coming from. And it's extremely difficult if you're in a lockdown situation or if you're in a less free movement situation as we are at the moment. Another challenge, and this comes back to what I just said a moment ago, online goes with offline enforcement activities. If your product is online, or if a counterfeit is online, it means that it's being manufactured somewhere, it's being distributed somewhere, it's being transported. All of this needs to be found out, so it goes hand in hand together. Just taking away a link somewhere on the internet doesn't mean that it won't appear somewhere else, and it doesn't mean that you've cut off the source. So that's extremely important. Sorry, where are we on time, just so that I know?
Roughly 2 minutes left.
Okay, I'll hurry up on these two. Observations and trends. Quite a few common grounds with Valentina here. Obviously, a boom in e-commerce mathematically is the same boom in IP infringing activities. And once again, if we're on lockdown, if you can't take a raid or if you can't do your investigation, you won't be able to find out where the products are coming from. Make sure that you do your customs registrations, because the e-commerce has grown more and more complete, and because the customs will need your help to go after and at least to find the infringing products. Another trend, and this is highly important, and it goes on the positive note, the China courts. People were a lot afraid to take anything to court in China when it comes to IP. They have specialized IP courts that are quite sophisticated, who understand what is happening, and there is a real wish of the Chinese government to get away from this all counterfeit reputation that the country has. So a lot of cards can be played in your favor. And then just to quickly finish off, and on a positive note, things can be done, success stories do exist. We are one of them. We've had quite a few successful IP court cases. So this is civil law. Once again, it takes a lot of money to get through it, or it takes a fair amount of money and quite a lot of time, but it is possible. And we've had compensations awarded by the courts from the defendants. We're not in it for the money, but it helps at the end of the day. Criminal cases, we've had quite a few successful criminal cases as well. It's not something that I'm extremely happy about, but at the end of the day, several people were put to jail for anything from 2 to 4 years. So it just shows how the government in China is willing to act. For the very first time in 2019, we managed to get a preliminary injunction, which is extremely rare. It was the first of it. In China, basically a preliminary injunction is you go to a judge, and the judge gives his order on the spot, pending further investigation, but he can already render judgment in the favor or against a defendant or complainant like us. And then very last point, and I'll be done with that, several of our cases were directly linked to cases in Europe with other brands, even some very reputable brands, international brands that you'll probably have heard of, but I won't be talking about specifically today. But just to say that intercontinental cases are possible as well. Once again, it takes a lot of organization and it takes a strong will to get there. So there you are. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Xavier, for that very practical presentation. We'll now move on to Joyce, who will share the e-commerce perspective. Over to you, Joyce. Thank you.
Thanks, Shamini. Hi, everyone. I will have 10 minutes, so I have quite a number of slides, but I'm actually going to skim over them quite quickly. Next slide, please. So, really the Lazada mission is about accelerating progress in Southeast Asia through commerce and technology. And you will see in the next few slides, right, how we are really leveraging on technology to fulfill on not just the main Lazada mission, but also in carrying out our IPR protection work. And how this is relevant, I think, to SME is we have a vision by 2030 to serve 300 million customers across Southeast Asia, thereby creating millions of jobs within the e-commerce ecosystem, and really to power real and profitable SMEs across Southeast Asia. So we are one of the first few platforms to recognize that, you know, we want the platform to be supporting powerful and real and profitable SMEs and not be a marketplace for counterfeit products. Next slide, please. So I'll just very quickly, you know, touch on the e-commerce trends that we've seen in the COVID-19 pandemic. And it really echoes what Valentina has shared earlier about, and also Shamini has shared about some data around maybe, you know, like a 400 million increase in the users on e-commerce. So we see clearly the trend for an online demand because of the lockdown. And because of this online demand, the supply chains have opened up. So not just a surge in the number of buyers going online, but also a surge in the number of new sellers joining the e-commerce market. And a lot of the new sellers are really what I call dabbling in the e-commerce space. It's really their first foray into transforming their business from a traditional brick and mortar shop to a shop front on an e-commerce platform like Lazada. And I think what is interesting that, you know, we should also watch out for in the Southeast Asia context is live streaming engagement by sellers. Now, in some of the more mature e-commerce markets, for example, in China, live streaming engagement is already a norm. There's a lot of merchants who have already taken on to live streaming as a way of engaging their customers. And, you know, live sales actually generate a kind of hype. And then there's some kind of urgency because there are, you know, vouchers or discounts to be given away during that specific period of time. So it creates an urgency for the purchaser to make that purchase. What we're seeing is that there is now an uptake through this COVID-19 pandemic, right? So what would have taken longer to set root, for example, live streaming in Southeast Asia, has actually accelerated in COVID-19. The reason is that sellers are now not able to, especially in the lockdown situations, there's actually very little chance to engage their customers live. So the only option in some countries is actually only through live streaming that you actually get a live engagement with your customers. And of course, we will see that with the online search in trade, both demand and supply, scams, seller-related fraud, and with scams and fraud, I cover also, you know, IPR-related issues. Of course, you know, if it was a percentage of anything and that pie grew, then we can also expect that the scammers and the fraudsters also want to join in have a, you know, a slice of this pie. So if for those of you in Singapore and if you've been following the news, 2020 actually recorded an increase in e-commerce scams in Singapore, and is actually having, you know, like the Singapore police force sitting up and paying attention to this issue. So the challenges, I think I'll highlight one quick one here, which is because many consumers, right, are also trading or buying that online for the first time, you know, the new 40 million users. So they have a lack of awareness or alertness to counterfeits or misinformation, and they fall prey to scams. So very specific to the COVID-19 pandemic situation, we saw in the beginning, there was some misinformation about certain types of drugs being able to cure COVID-19. This was the early days. There was also a lot of misinformation about about vaccines after that, when talk about vaccines came out. So as an e-commerce platform that is committed to protect our consumers, right? We actually have to really keep abreast with what are the trends, what are scammers and fraudsters thinking and deploying as tactics now to actually defraud consumers on our platform. And on the IPR front, and this is related, there's also a lot, we also work very closely with the pharmaceutical industry because some of these drugs are actually prescription drugs or just drugs that have been publicized wrongfully that they can cure COVID-19. And so we work very closely with the pharmaceutical industry and associations, right, to make sure that if the drug is counterfeit is taken off, if the drug is a prescription drug and is not allowed for sale online, it's taken off our platform. And we've even gone so far as to remove the keyword search for COVID-19 so that the sellers cannot use these keywords to prevent fraud on our platform. Moving on, please, next slide. So yes, so moving on to best practices, right? And this is relevant to, I guess, all businesses trying to run an effective business on the e-commerce platform, and for SMEs who are looking to protect their IPRs online. We at Lazada IPR protection team, we have a program that has got 4 focus areas around IPR policy, merchant education, and I mentioned earlier, technology-driven governance, and most importantly, I think, which is quite the universal theme in today's workshop, right? Which is stakeholder collaboration. Next slide, please. So very quickly, you can actually find Lazada's intellectual property rights in the policy on Lazada website. So I will not go too much into detail, but suffice to say, the main categories of pirated products, counterfeit products, and products which infringe designs and patents are protected under this policy. Next slide, please. And under merchant education pillar, right, we actually take it upon ourselves to design courses and to make our merchants aware of IPR issues so that we can support them to grow their business legitimately whilst respecting IP rights. So you can see that we actually incorporate IPR education into seller journeys in the form of Lazada University courses. And these are courses that are available to the sellers during their onboarding process. Next slide, please. And moving on to technology-driven governance, I want to really spend a bit of time on this slide. You can scan the QR code on this slide if you would wish to find out more information or sign up for the IPP platform. So the IPP platform currently has more than 1,000 registered users. We started in midway in 2019. And in the past year, we've seen a 3.2 times increase in the number of requests that are being processed. And we are seeing processing time now at 3 days. And we're all consistently working to bring that processing time down. So this is a very useful tool for brands to give us effective and fast notice about any infringing links that they find on our platform. So in the interests of time, I will not spend too much time talking about the IPP platform. I encourage everyone who has an interest to find out if they can sign up for, how they can enforce their rights on our platform, to scan the QR code and read all the FAQs and sign up for an account. Then you can file your request, takedown request, and there will be a whole timeline that you can see. So each request, how the process at which this, the state at you can actually find out whether your process is being, your request is being processed, and also you will learn about the outcome of that request. So it is much better than a traditional email account, for example. and still better than just an online form where you actually file your request without knowing what's happening to that request. So there's a lot of transparency and accountability once you set up on the IPP platform. Next slide, please.
Joyce, just a kind reminder of the time.
Sure. How many more minutes?
We're actually over the 10.
Okay, sure. The last pillar I want to really quickly highlight is stakeholder collaboration. And this is again the common theme from the earlier two presenters' presentation, right? So we can't do this all by ourselves. There are a lot of product knowledge identification factors in a product, which only the brand owners know. So at Lazada, we really want to collaborate with brand owners, whether you are an SME or an MNC, so long as you are a brand owner, come and have a conversation with us if you are finding it difficult to navigate any of our IPR protection offerings. Next slide, please. Oh, okay, so I actually come to the end of my presentation, and then, well, maybe if you have any questions, you can raise it during the Q&A, and then we can try and answer that. Back to you, Shamini.
Thank you very much, Joyce, for that informative presentation. So I'll begin my first question with yourself, Joyce. With one of the points that you raised during your presentation is with regards to scams. What percentage of scams are related to IPR infringement matters?
Right, that's a very interesting question that I've been asked a lot. So unfortunately, there isn't a meaningful way to calculate like a substantiable a meaningful way to calculate this percentage or to give an exact figure. What I can say is there's definitely a correlation between counterfeiters and scammers operating on our platform. First and foremost, the scammers are people who probably have very likely have very little regard for the law. And so they are also very likely to be offering products that are not legitimate. However, at Lazada, we don't just have an IPR protection program in place. We also have an anti-seller fraud team that looks after, really looks at seller fraud. So what we've done is at the IPR team, we actually share a lot of information internally. These two teams, cross-functional teams, share a lot of information internally, precisely because we see that there is a correlation between these sort of scammers and sellers. And we believe that if we clean the platform up on both aspects, then the consumers actually get the benefit. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, Shamini. It
does. Very quickly, and in the interest of time, but I think this question may be of interest to everyone online. And I don't know if you can answer this question, so don't worry if you can't. From your observation and having dealt or worked on the online scam issues, are these scammers typically located in country, or do they originate from outside of the jurisdiction? And when I say jurisdiction, doesn't mean Singapore per se, it could be any of the jurisdictions.
So we actually see that there are a fair number of what we call cross-border sellers that get flagged and removed, either before they get flagged and they don't make it onto the platform, or they get flagged after they make it onto the platform, but for various screening reasons they are removed. There's a fair bit of cross-border ones. So cross-border means outside of the jurisdiction, say Singapore.
Yep.
But then there are some other sellers within the jurisdiction. But I would say yes, it's not 100% outside, but that is a mix.
It's a mix. Brilliant. Thank you for that. On that note, I will move to Valentina. Valentina, in your presentation, you made reference to small parcel consignments becoming an urgent issue and how this is linked to online scams and credit cards. Are you able to elaborate a little bit more? And in terms, and also what measures have brand owners or institutions taken place to mitigate this risk?
Yes, so during the presentation, perhaps there was not enough time to develop on the points, but one trend that we have also identified usually, and in the experience of several businesses as well, before, when thinking about counterfeits, we're thinking about large cargo and therefore large seizures of counterfeited goods. But with the development and the increase of use of online space, clearly consumers purchase small quantities, which means that those products, in case of counterfeited products, were shipped by airmail or by sea shipments in very small quantities, and therefore the name is small parcels. And this has been really a headache and an issue for all these key stakeholders involved, of course, for brands, because they have to face an infringement of a very small quantity and devote their resources in that. For the e-commerce platforms as well, to monitor each and every one item of purchase as well. But there are also other key stakeholders involved, actually. I mean, the logistic companies, the payment companies, payment service providers companies as well. So the picture actually enlarges more when we think about all the parties involved. So this is one thing, and of course, I mean, this makes it poses more challenges to go after each and every small parcel. So clearly, perhaps it's really not possible for brands to follow all of this, but working in cooperation with the enforcement authorities, which are of course in charge of monitoring and helping them, providing information so that they're able also to detect whether there are non-authorized distributors or sellers involved, and also work sharing the information with the commerce platforms will help in preventing this. This is definitely, it was already a trend because before COVID-19, but it became really the normal type of purchase, during these days. And this is linked also with the point that we were discussing with Joyce in terms of the phishing of credit cards and payments and scams. They're also involved. So we don't have yet, of course, found a solution, unfortunately, otherwise we will not be here speaking, but I think it's very important as a first point to raise the awareness of all these issues, to make businesses, consumers, and all the parties I mentioned involved alerted of this specific trend. And of course, then, again, I stress the point very much on disseminating, exchanging information is really the key, by joining programs, by providing information with law enforcement, and so on. And this is very doable, I would like to say, for SMEs as well, because it's always a point,
Excellent. Thank you so much, Valentina. Xavier, that takes me over to you. Once again, congratulations on your successes in China. From my previous life, I'm well aware how challenging the jurisdiction can be, but also it can be rewarding. On that note, you've shared with us your IPR strategy for BabyZen in China. The question here is it the same for Southeast Asia or ASEAN? And what would you say is the top 2 or 3 differences?
It's fairly similar, regardless of the country. I mean, it's if you don't have any registered IP, you won't be able to defend it. It's as easy as that. If you don't understand the legal system, you won't be able to do much about it. So that's why you need your local help. So to be honest with you, as different culturally or even in terms of business relations as each country can be, when it comes to defending your IP rights, it's extremely, extremely similar. It's very straightforward. One big issue that I would mention, for instance, in China, I'd have to look into the legal system of the other Asian or ASEAN countries, at least, is that when you do have a patent infringement case, for instance, this is pure civil law. So it's up to you to do your investigation, to prove your case. You present it to a judge, and you win or you don't. A lot of countries, this is already under criminal law. So it's not as straightforward as a trademark where you can see that it's been copied, but even patent infringement can be criminal law in certain countries. This is where I would see a difference perhaps, but then I'd have to check it up in each country particularly or legal system. Unfortunately, I don't have the legal background to support the claim immediately.
Thank you, Xavier. Just another follow-on question from that. Have you, for your business, have you observed an increase in small parcels being an issue in the IPR enforcement space?
Yeah, there has.
Mm-hmm.
There's been an increase, but it's also much more difficult to spot and to identify. So for when it comes to customs, will they be making the effort of intercepting one of these counterfeit product parcels as opposed to a full container? But there has been an increased number of cases. To bounce back on what Joyce was saying earlier on, there's a lot of cross-border activity happening.
Mm-hmm.
And with cross-border activity comes the small parcels, obviously, as well. Also much more difficult to identify. They get lost in the mass of millions of parcels going across each and every border every day. So.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Xavier. A question for Lazada. What are the required documents that one should submit to request takedown of fake products on your platform?
Okay. Very simply, you need to prove to us your identity. So like, for example, if you're enforcing your rights as a company, then we need to see that you have the rights, you're authorized by that company to enforce your rights. And let's just take a very typical case of a trademark counterfeit product that you're trying to report. Then we will need to see the relevant trademark certificate, like how Xavier had pointed out, right? So you have to really protect your IPR and get a registration in the jurisdiction that you are seeking to enforce your rights. And in the case of Lazada, we actually will expect to see, if you are trying to enforce in Vietnam, then we expect to see a Vietnam trademark certificate. In Malaysia, then a Malaysian trademark certificate. So give us your letter of authorization from the company and give us your registered trademark proof, and then give us the URL. It's very important that you give us the exact link as well. And then if you're on the IPP platform system, then there will be reason codes and all that, but that comes later. So the first important step is to set up your account and get your identification and rights verified. Then the rest of the steps become easier.
Thank you. Before I go around the panelists to share their quick takeaway for the audience, are there any questions online aside from those that were posted? Nope. Okay. Right. Xavier, what's your one takeaway that you'd like the audience to go away with?
At the risk of sounding repetitive, but comes from practical experience, and to bounce back on once again on what Joyce was saying, if you don't have it in one country, you won't be able to do anything, even though it still is your product. So get your IP rights organized, register where you can, as broad as you can. This will only help you in the near future or in any future when it comes to IP defense. Without that, nothing is possible. But with it, a lot of things are possible. So don't be discouraged.
Excellent. Thank you, Xavier. Joyce.
To follow up from, just a follow on from Xavier's point, right? So after you got your rights registered, do spend the time and some effort to understand each platform's takedown procedure. Because we are dealing with a lot of takedown requests every day. And in order to make it efficient for all right holders, we have to come up with a system. Unfortunately, every platform will have a slightly different system from another. So do make take the time and effort to invest and learn how you can upload your documents and how you can file. And I assure you that once you get through that process, at least on the Lazada platform, then the rest of it, you will find that you're getting efficient takedown request processing.
Excellent. Thank you, Joyce. Valentina.
Yeah, so I think as a conclusion after both Xavier and Joyce, clearly, I mean, for companies, make your own homework in with the registrations and also taking the time to understand, to take down notes. But as a representative of INTA, I would like to really stress also the message of considering that, you know, you can work really in partnership, and consider that because this is a common problem affecting all companies, you are not alone, but you cannot also fight all alone yourself. So consider, of course, also association like ours, we're here to help. If you would like to consider, you know, connecting with INTA, then you could be also part of committee's activities, the surveys, and all the projects that I mentioned before. So consider that there are generally several sources that can help you and provide support and be in source of information.
Thank you so much, Valentina. Once again, thank you very much to distinguished speakers. I will very quickly wrap up and summarize the key takeaway from today's discussion. Starting from Valentina's last point, which is the key takeaway, industry experience and sharing of best practice is becoming that much more important compared to probably 10, 15 years ago. We are actually living and working in an ever evolving and fast evolving space in the e-commerce and the digital world. That's one. The second part is the importance of cross-border engagement with the increase of, essentially it's already there with small parcel movement of small parcels within jurisdictions. There is an increased need to involve not just in-country enforcement authorities, but authorities at the border as well. And last but not least, the growing importance of commitment from platforms. As we've seen, the platforms are committed, and there is a need to continue that engagement. Thank you very much for your time, everyone. I'll hand it over to Michelle.
Yes, thank you, Shamini. So this concludes our webinar for today. I would just like to, on behalf of EuroCham and the Southeast Asia IPSME Help Desk, to thank our speakers, Valentina, Xavier, and Joyce. Thank you for very insightful sharing. And also thank you, Shamini, for great moderation of the session. I would also like to thank the Help Desk for co-organizing this event with us. And lastly, but not least, I would like to thank all the participants and members and partners of EuroCham. Please keep an eye out for more events, both at EuroCham and at the Help Desk on the topic of IP, and also for EuroCham on the topic of a lot of different things. Thank you.